Hey, it's Sarah. If you're feeling heavy tonight, or lonely, or sad, or anything that's just too hard to handle by yourself right now, then this is for you. And I want you to think of my voice as a lantern in the dark, shining just a little bit of light ahead so that you're not quite so alone. Now, I'm not here to fix anything. I just want to sit with you for a few minutes in whatever it is that you're carrying. And I want to talk to the version of you that loved so hard, the one who gave more than was asked, more than was returned, more than was probably wise, the one who saw potential in someone and decided that potential was worth pouring yourself into, even when the evidence kept suggesting otherwise, the one who stayed a little longer than made sense, the one who explained themselves one more time, hoping that this time it would land differently, the one who made themselves smaller or more available, more understanding, more patient, not because they were asked to, but because they were trying to make the thing work through sheer force of loving. I know that version of you. I know it well. And I want you to hear something that nobody probably said to you when it was falling apart. That wasn't a character flaw. That was a heart that hadn't yet learned to protect itself without closing. That was a person who believed, genuinely believed, that if you loved hard enough, clearly enough, consistently enough, it would eventually land. And it would eventually be enough. They would eventually see it and rise to meet it. And that's not stupidity, and that is not weakness. That's not you being naive or blind or foolish. That's someone who still believed in the transformative power of love at a time when that belief was costing them everything. And there is something quietly courageous about that, even when it ends badly. But here's what I need you to sit with tonight. The love was real. No one can take that from you. What you felt was real. What you gave was real. The connection, however complicated it became, however much it hurt on the way out, it was real. Don't let anyone, including yourself, minimize that into a mistake you made. And it still wasn't the right place to put all of it. Not because you were wrong to love, but because you were loving a potential instead of a person. A version of someone that existed just enough to be believable, but never quite enough to be sustainable. And you kept showing up for the version you could see was possible, the one you caught glimpses of on the good days, in the quiet moments, in the version of them that showed up when things were easy, while the version that was actually there kept falling short of it when it mattered. And that gap between who they were and who you believed they could be, that gap cost you something. It cost you time. It cost you energy. It cost you some of your own clarity. The moments when you second-guessed what you were seeing because you didn't want it to be true. It probably cost you some of your own identity as well. The things that you set aside or didn't pursue because you were so focused on holding space for them. And here's the part that's hard to say and harder to hear. They couldn't receive what you were giving. Not because it wasn't good enough and not because you weren't enough, but because a person who hasn't done their own work doesn't have the capacity to receive real love without flinching away from it or trying to manage it or eventually retreating from it entirely. You weren't rejected. You were too much for where they were, and that's a different thing entirely. And I want to stay with that for a second because I think it matters. There is a version of this story where you walk away believing you love wrong, that you love too intensely, too deeply, too hopefully, that you should have known better, that you should have pulled back sooner, that you should have been less. That version of the story is a lie. The truth is you love exactly right. You love with your whole self, with presence and consistency and genuine belief in the people you choose. And that is not a problem. That is not something to be managed or dialed down or apologized for. It just needs a different home. It needs to be pointed somewhere that can actually receive it. someone who doesn't need you to love them into figuring out who they are, someone who is already doing the work on themselves, who has already looked at their own patterns, sat with their own wounds, chosen their own growth, and wants you beside them while they continue. Not someone you're carrying, not someone replaying and reliving old patterns, someone walking next to you, a partnership, a team. You were not too much. You never were. You were just in the wrong place with all of that love. And the wrong place will always make the right thing feel like a problem. It will make your depth feel like pressure, your consistency feel like expectation, your hope feel like demand. Not because those things are problems, but because the wrong container cannot hold them. The right container, it won't flinch. The right container will feel like finally being able to breathe. The right container will feel like coming home. So tonight, if you're sitting with the grief of having loved too hard in the wrong direction, I just want you to know that the love itself was never the mistake. The love is the best thing about you. It just deserves somewhere and someone worthy of it. And you are allowed to wait for that. You are allowed to stop pouring yourself into places that cannot hold you, that cannot contain you. You are allowed to be selective with something that precious. You earned that right the hard way. So I'm going to leave the lantern right here next to you tonight, not so you can see where you went wrong, but so you can see how much you still have, how full you still are, how much of you is still here, still whole, still open, still capable of exactly the kind of love that felt like it broke you. It didn't break you. It taught you where not to put it next time. And that is not a small thing.